and we are ready to hear the last talk of today. Tomorrow there will be one more day held completely in Russian, but maybe some of non-speaking colleagues would like to see the event as well.
Today, that will be made by Maxime. I'm sorry if I mispronounced. Maxime Deslongchamps-Gagnon, maybe so, from University of Montreal. And the title of the presentation is "What do you have in mind? Interest, care, and concern as emotional dispositions to gameplay." So, please.
Right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Very good. I'll just share this. Can you see this also? Okay. Very good. Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to present today. I'm Maxime Deslongchamps-Gagnon. I'm PhD candidate in film studies at University of Montreal. I work on the ethics of the emotional experience of single-player video games. And yeah, let's begin. So game studies have examined the experience of single-player video games mostly through concepts such as immersion, identification, affect, and agency. While these concepts shed light on important aspects of what it is like to play video games, there's still a long way to go to get the full picture of what's really going on in people's mind when they play. In this respect, care is a relevant line of approach to open up the scope of discussion. But it is also a messy concept, closely related to other categories of the mind, interest and concern in particular. In this presentation, I want to untangle the concept of care from the latter two through a hierarchical model of our disposition to experience emotions in single-player video games. I will build this model by analyzing how interest, care, and concern are considered in the philosophy of emotion as three different emotional dispositions, and by taking into account their roles in the experience of video games according to the works of Oli Leno, Sébastien Morin, and Bernard Père. The ultimate goal of this presentation is to contribute to the development of a philosophy of the mind at play by discerning various categories of the mind and by expanding game studies vocabulary beyond the aforementioned popular concepts. The philosophy of emotion has drawn an important distinction between emotional dispositions and emotional occurrences, or in other words, emotions, which is going to help us understand the nature of care. First of all, as Jesse Prince has written, care is not an emotion, but rather a disposition to experience different emotions. If you care about someone, you will be delighted by her achievements and distressed by her suffering. Caring opens up a whole range of emotion types. For example, it is because I care about this talk, about the presentation of my work, that I might feel relief if all goes well, embarrassment if I make a fool of myself, pride when receiving praise, regrets when acknowledging mistakes, frustration if technical problems happen, and so on. Caring is the potentiality for emotions to arise. As an emotional disposition, caring has different relation to time than emotional occurrences. When you care about someone or something, the duration of your caring might extend to years or even a whole life. Your caring might enter phases in which it is dormant when, for instance, forgetting how dear your partner really is to you as you're taking them for granted, and phases in which it is aroused when your partner accuses you of neglecting them and you realize you don't want them to leave you. As we will see, your caring then becomes a concern. On the contrary, an emotional occurrence is far more limited in duration. It is a reaction to something, an intense burst of feeling which might last for only a couple of seconds, as long as the situation is still relevant to your carings. For instance, as a pedestrian, I will experience an occurrence of fear when crossing the street as a vehicle approaches rapidly, but my fear will dissipate as soon as I know that I'm safe. I might then feel a bit of anger when thinking about the recklessness of the driver, but this anger won't stay with me at every moment of my life, unless, of course, I have anger issues. While my emotions fade away, as the situation goes back to normal, my caring for safety remains and will lead to many more emotional occurrences. Using the term concern to encompass care, Psychologist Nico Frieda and philosopher Robert Roberts defends a concern-based model of emotions, according to which concern is a necessary condition to any emotional occurrence. An excellent example of this model is embodied by Meursault, the main character in Albert Camus' novel L'Étranger, or in English, The Stranger. In this book, Meursault is described as someone who doesn't care about anything, making him emotionally dysfunctional. He won't experience grief following his mother's death, feelings of love for his partner, or even guilt towards his crimes. Nothing matters to him, he's just indifferent about any states of the world. Camus demonstrates in this novel that without caring, our life will be a mess. It will be impossible for us to ascribe importance or value to what surrounds us. We will be unable to experience emotions towards the world as if we were not part of it. The relation between care and emotion is nicely summed up by Eva Maria Duringer, who states that the driving engine behind all emotion is our caring about things. This conceptual connection applies equally to the context of experience video games. Why do we have emotions when playing games? Because we care about what's happening in the game, or because we are concerned about it. I'm not going to differentiate care from concern yet. In his paper, Emotions in Video Games, Are You Concerned? Bernard Perron mentions that the common target of our concern is the human being, ourselves or others. Perron then proceeds to formulate two types of concerns. Concerns about our in-game progress, our success and our failure, and concerns about the characters of the game, who have their own identity. And these two types of concerns respectively lead to gameplay emotions arising from what we do as game players, and fictional emotions arising from what characters do independently of us. Of course, these categories are not mutually exclusive, and besides, I'm simply invoking Perron's work to show that there's already a basic portrait of our disposition to experience emotions in single-player video games, which, in addition, corresponds to Roberts and Frieda Caron-Sunburn's model of emotions. According to this portrait, we are filled with joy at our success, and we're disappointed at our failure in games only when we're concerned about the game, our progress in the game. And we have a feeling of triumph or sadness about the fate of characters only when we're concerned about them. Although Perron's typology is also is a good starting point, I'll try to refine his account of emotional disposition in a few moments. Now, we could point out that the fundamental question is not why do we have emotions when playing games, but why do we even care about what's happening in a game? After all, it's just a game. On the face of it, it doesn't make sense to care for something as trivial as games and for how they are played. Influenced by existential phenomenology, some scholars in game studies argue on the contrary that game players have to care about their special condition, what we could call their existence as game players, in order to keep the project of playing the game going. Oli Leno states that the gameplay condition, an intersubjective and universal condition akin to what we share as human beings, dictates a degree of minimal caring. Following Leno, Sebastian Morin claimed that the gameplay condition implies a care structure. To put it short and maybe a little bit roughly, game playing is caring. If you don't care about the game, you're not playing it. I'm sorry, I forgot this. If you don't care about a game, you're not playing it. You may be playing with it, that is doing something else with it, spoiling it, remixing it, entering irrelevant inputs, but your behavior will indicate carelessness about keeping the game going. By highlighting that playing a game requires a specific state of mind, Leno's and Morin's claims that take part in what I previously called the philosophy of the mind at play. They are especially interesting since they complicate the nature of caring, which now seems to precede both gameplay and emotional occurrences. Before further considering the idea of game playing as caring, I want to improve slightly our current account of emotional disposition in the experience of single-player video games. To do this, I will first make some fine distinctions between care and concern, and secondly, I will present a third mode of emotional disposition, interest, which causes a problem to the conception of game playing as care. The philosophy of emotion has mainly used care and concern in an interchangeable way, and so did I. One of the few who has separated these concepts is Jesse Prince. He remarks that care is related to concern because we are concerned for those who care about. Concern arises when something or someone we care about is in jeopardy. I interpret this to mean that care becomes a concern when something is at stake. And I don't agree with Prince when he adds that concern is a sort of worry or a species of fear, as it blurs the line between emotional disposition and occurrence. Recall that I said care presents two phases, one being dormant and the other being aroused. The variation between care and concern I want to draw attention to is similar to this. Let me exemplify again. In our lifetime, we care about our friends, and this caring remains stable as long as they are friends. All these times, they have a special place in our heart in a way that a majority of people don't. However, there are moments in this friendship when our caring transforms into concerns. When we learn that our friend is sick, we become concerned about their health. When we learn they have a job interview, we become concerned about them getting it. Here, concern is a desire for a goal to be reached, and this desire could not take shape without caring, but also without conflict, without something being at stake. While concern is goal-oriented, care is best conceived as an attachment or even an affiliation. It is what connects a parent to a child, an activist to their cause, a PhD candidate to their thesis. Frida and Roberts sketch some of these distinctions, but they're not really interested in maintaining it, given that they refer to concern as both a desire and an attachment. In the case of the experience of video games, we could claim that following Leno and Moring, we care about the game at play, but we become concerned about it in moments of difficulties and risks and rewards, such as when a challenging level threatens with failure or project of keeping the game going. Whereas the former emotional disposition ascribe importance to the played game, only the latter make us clearly focus on the goal of avoiding failure. Care and concern also explain different kinds of relations to characters. We might care about the character for various narrative reasons, because they appear as a good person, or likable, or familiar to us. For instance, I care about Ellie in The Last of Us, a third-person action game set in a post-apocalyptic world, because she's an orphan born in a miserable era, and because she's oblivious to many cultural activities I take for granted, such as going to movies and listening to music. Both her and Joel, the player character, needs each other to survive. This is made obvious by one environmental game mechanic, which makes characters cooperate to clear blocked entries or reach otherwise inaccessible locations. By letting me know Ellie, letting me see her deal with the world she lives in, The Last of Us secures my attachment to her. When a specific conflict arises, though, for example, when Joel treats her harshly or when infected are all over the place, I start being concerned for her. I form a desire that she's treated with respect or that she finds safety, and I will play in accordance with this goal, if available, of course. These concerns may in turn lead to various emotions: fear for her getting killed, compassion about her undeserved fate, anger at Joel for being paternalist, and so on. I will keep feeling these emotions until the situations are resolved. Even though care and concern play a major part in our emotional life, they do not explain the occurrences of every single emotion type. Julien Deona and Fabrice Terani, have remarked that it is doubtful aesthetic emotions are signs of any emotional states whatsoever. For instance, any motivational states whatsoever, For instance, when I leave the cave at the beginning of The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, as the camera detaches from Link's point of view to rise in the air, allowing me to look at Hyrule's open plains covered in mist, a feeling of awe comes over me. This emotion is not preceded by any sort of care or concern, attachment or desire. It simply emerges from the encounter between my perception and the object of my perception, namely the landscape. Surprise, sublime, and wonder are other kinds of emotions which seem devoid of pre-existent care or concern, whether they occur during the experience of video games or any other art form. To explain how we come to aesthetic emotions, Roberts presents interest as a unipolar emotional disposition, which may be dissatisfied not by one state or another of the object, but by the object. Concern, as I have talked about, is bipolar. It is satisfied by a positive or negative state of the object. It comes with a goal that can be met or not. In other words, when concern has both a desire to achieve a goal and an aversion to not achieve it. But the sole presence of an object is enough to spark my interest. To return to our previous example, seeing the landscape in Breath of the Wild is sufficient to arouse my interest and to incline me to feel awe. We could not say that I care about the state of the landscape or that I'm concerned by it. I just have to get a view of it to be disposed to aesthetic emotions. Another reason to discuss interest is that it's generally the first emotional disposition cultivated by a game. When we think about it, one key aim of promotional materials is to make us interested into games, thanks to teasers, trailers, and synopsis. The first moment of a game also tends to spark our interest. This can be done creating an unusual situation. In Disco Elysium, for instance, the opening scenes fades into a man in underwear laid on the floor of a messy room with a bottle of wine in a hand, waking up from what it looks like a night of heavy drinking. This is an interesting scene, since we can't help but wonder what happened during that night and why the man drank to the point of passing out. We then play the game in order to find answers to these questions. The settings is another way to elicit interest by appealing to hypothetical contemplation. A game such as Frostpunk asks, what if a glacial period was on the verge of decimating the British Empire during the industrial age? How the government and its people would respond to this? Playing the game means exploring these questions. We can also think that game mixing mechanics from different genres or presenting original dynamic systems are also able to stimulate interest. In fact, ways to tap into this emotional disposition are so numerous it will be useless to enumerate them all. Suffice to say that they are often selling points for consumers, ways to lure them into a game and convince them to keep playing. Moreover, interest acts as a basis for care and concern. When experiencing a game, our caring and concerns are not secured right away. We usually have to get close to the characters and invest in considerable time and effort in playing the game first. Interest provides the initial motivation to do this, and only then we might start to care about the game and its characters. This is why we expect to feel powerful emotion not at the beginning of a game, but towards its end, when its paroxysm is reached and our attachment is stronger than ever. To get back to the example of The Last of Us, even before caring about Ellie and being concerned about all the conflicts she faces, I'm interested in her relationship with Joel. During the course of the game, I wonder if the man will love her as if she was his own daughter who died 20 years ago, and if a painful separation will mark the ending. Again, these questions are a source of motivation for progressing in the game. Gradually, by embarking on a perilous journey with them, watching them interact, consciously avoiding bloodthirsty clickers, the special kind of infected, fighting bandits, my interest turns into care and concern. In this sense, interest, care, and concern are not fixed states of mind, but dynamic dispositions which adapt to context and develop and transform through time. As we can see, these three emotional dispositions are connected in a hierarchical way. Interest leads to care, which leads to concern, which encompasses the former two. If you are concerned about something or someone, you also care about them and are interested in them. As a bipolar disposition, concern is a precondition to a wider range of emotions than care and interest, monitoring positive and negative changes in situations relevant to us instead of merely detecting presence of objects. Figure 1 represents our necessary disposition to experience emotions in single-player video games and their relations. Most of my effort has gone into explaining how we come to experience an extensive variety of emotions and when playing games and when not playing games. I will now show how my account of emotional dispositions may shed light on problems related to the idea that game playing is caring. The first problem concerns apathy. We sometimes remain emotionless when playing a game, which suggests a lack of care. Does it therefore mean that we are not actually playing a game since we're in the wrong state of mind? This seems unreasonable. As academics, when we study games, we're engaged in a way that doesn't involve emotions. We play critically, adopting a reflexive and analytical attitude, taking a distant perspective on what we do, even though it's sometimes difficult not to surrender to the pleasure of play. But in any case, we're still playing the game. The same goes with games that just leave us indifferent, even when they're supposed to move us. We all once tried a generic AAA game, felt like we already played 100 times. Of course, we didn't force ourselves to play it much longer, but sometimes games we like and are very long to beat neutralize our caring. One reason is that we're at a point where we're just eager to reach a conclusion. We just keep playing to get rid of it, not because we care. In this sense, game playing as caring goes against the common sense idea that we can play a game without emotionally reacting to it. The second problem regards interest. Some games don't really create an experience of caring about something or someone. They rather create an experience of ambiguity, confusion, or even aesthetic contemplation, and rely on our interest to make us puzzle over their meanings or appreciate the beauty of what they offer. This is the case of artsy games such as Proteus, a walking simulator in which we visit an island, every living being, stone, human-made structure, type of terrain, and weather responds to our movement by emitting a singular sound effect, accumulating into an ever-changing symphonious concert. The progress in the game, we have to accomplish some kind of ritual which accelerates the passage of time until the arrival of a new season. Meanwhile, we spend most of the game hunting down new musical arrangements to appreciate. The island is full of secrets, and its alien aspect has everything to spark our interest, but not our caring and our concerns. We could say that we are interested in the presence of new audible effects, and that our interest may be satisfied by our discoveries, but not that we care or are concerned about these aesthetic effects. As a game without failure condition, Proteus is devoid of conflicts to face. There's just no need to make an effort to keep the game going. Its experience mainly resolves around one single emotional disposition, interest. When playing Proteus, we remain careless. And of course, we could say that it's not even a game, but that's another story. And before ending this presentation, I want to briefly explore the idea that games follow a question and answer structure rather than a care structure, suggesting that interest is a more important disposition to the experience of video games than care. Bernard Perron gives support to this idea when developing the notion of erotetic gameplay based on Noel Carroll's erotetic narrations. Inspired by a formal functionist approach to film studies, Carroll defends that the core narrative structures of Hollywood-type films involve generating questions that ensuing scene answers. For example, Ridley Scott's Alien presents a situation in which a dangerous creature has been accidentally brought aboard a spaceship, leaving us viewers wondering whether the crew will be able to get rid of it and whether the protagonist is going to escape the subsequent slaughter. The film raises these questions only to provide answers later. Meanwhile, it bets on the viewers being sufficiently interested in knowing what's going to happen next to stay in their seat. Just like films, games also direct our attention to questions central to their plots, settings, and more particularly, challenges. According to Perron, the main difference between the game player and the viewer is that the former is an answer maker, a decision maker, a problem solver. Games ask questions we have to answer by finding out how to progress, how to beat this opponent, or resolve that puzzle. Questions also motivate us to progress because we are expecting to be rewarded with answers, such as the final cutscenes showing the narrative consequences of our actions during the course of the game. As long as we don't already have all the answers and that the game actually has answers or solutions, there's a good chance that we are interested in game playing and that in turn, we experience unipolar emotions akin to curiosity, suspense, and surprise during our search for answers. So far, all games I've discussed form questions, though, whose answers are revealed by playing them. What will become of Ellie in The Last of Us? What did the man in underwear from Disco Elysium did during his night of drinking? In fact, it is many days of drinking. What other musical arrangement is waiting for us in Proteus? What marvels will we discover while exploring Hyrule's plains in Breath of the Wild? Our emotional experience springs from such questions, which do not need to be formulated explicitly. The motivation to play games comes from these as well. In this regard, interest might be the most important emotional disposition of them all. It comes with the fair assumption that that human beings are curious creatures who are willing to search for meanings and overcome problems. The question and answer structures it relies on also provides a plausible explanation to the origin of all our necessary disposition to experience emotions when playing games. After all, these must come from somewhere, and we must accept that games are able to affect us emotionally. Thus, before being concerned and caring, we have to be interested in playing the game. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxime. That was a great presentation. And Technically for the Q&A section for exactly that presentation, we have just 2 minutes. So I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of questions here. Yeah, there are best wishes to Max, as I see in the chat room. So anyway, let me then ask some. Yeah, I see Leonid Moises is raising his hand.
Well, first of all, I wanted to thank you for the great talk. It was very interesting, and I would be very grateful if you would, I don't know, copy your references or maybe send your presentation just in the chat room, because I would like to take a closer look at the sources and at your ideas. Thank you very much.
Right, I'll do this.
And my God, sorry, I kind of lost my thought. Maybe give the table to Renata.
Yeah,
I just need to collect my thoughts a bit.
I would love to just make a small announcement. We have to let go our nice and super interpreters who were working during those 2 days, because now they are running out of time and so on. We need to thank them, and I'm really grateful to you too, Anna and Nadezhda, and you made a great job. So I think that reaction of applauding here again is highly recommended and would be also met with great gratitude from translators as well. So thank you again. And again, as I said, the recording will be also available after with translation as well, and our technical support will work with it, and I will, as a head of the organizing committee, I will share it with everybody. So let's come back to the questions. Renata or Leonid, Leonid asked to give the word to Renata, as I understood. So Renata.
Yeah, hello. Thank you, Maxime, for this presentation. And also thank you to the interpreters. They did an amazing job. So my question would be, does your approach account for reflection? Because as I understand it, it's one thing to have an experience of a game, but we need a sort of mental distance to know that we are interested, or to know that we care. You know, this self-awareness that distances the feeling from the emotion.
Yes, I'm so happy you're asking the question, in fact. I have a, I didn't present Harry Frankfurt's account of caring, but I follow his work particularly. And Frankfurt said that caring is a reflexive attitude, because when you care about something, you agree with your caring, and you will differentiate care with desires. And you will give the example of the unwilling addict. The unwilling addict, desire is the object of his addiction, but since he's unwilling, he does not care about it. And for this reason, caring is a reflexive attitude. And also emotions, like when we talk about emotions, we think that it is like we react to illusions, or we react because we are engaged or immersed in the game. But emotions are cognitive. They are the product of an intellectual process. So they are kind of reflexive too, not like a self-conscious way, like you have this emotion, you can name it and all that. But when you have an emotion, you're aware of something. I'm afraid, I'm aware there is something to be scared of. There's something dangerous. I am angry, I am aware of an offense of someone who is not respectful, for instance. So I think there is a level of reflexivity in caring and emotion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So did I answer your question? So this is always the same problem for me. I'm never sure if I've actually answered the question of people. So
sort of, because I was mostly interested how you account for this difference? Because you talked about an experience during the game and care and being aware of caring. So I see a difference there. Like as you said, it's engagement and caring. There is a distance there.
All right, I see what you mean. I think it's by definition, when we care, we are aware of our caring somehow or another. Then I don't know what I could add to this. It's a good question.
Okay, it's a reflective question.
Yeah, it's we need reflection, more reflection on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata.
I also just noticed a question in the chat.
Yes, right.
Maybe I could answer to this.
Yeah,
it's coming from Nina.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to read it out loud. Thank you for your presentation. Thanks to you. Are you saying that interest can only come from awe, surprise, or wonder in relation to games, or do you just focus on those? Yeah, I think that there's many more. I think interest will lead to any let's call them unipolar objects of emotions. What I mean by that is that when you're interested, you don't react to people or to states of situation, but by presence of object. So this is why I talk about aesthetic emotion. We could also talk about narrative emotions when we talk about surprise, suspense, and much more, curiosity. These are not emotions toward the characters of the narrative, but the narrative itself. So I think interest leads to all these kind of emotions, which are just presence. If I have amusement, for instance, I react to the presence of a punchline. These kind of emotions, I think there's just they are just not as many as interest-based emotion than concern-based emotion, because concern well, as I said, you have to be interested in someone to be concerned to them also, but also because they are goal-oriented. And I think this is safe to say that as human, we are goal-oriented creatures. So it opens up to another range of emotion. So I hope I have answered your question, Nina.
Yeah, Nina, if you want to, you of course may also speak out loud and react somehow, or maybe you just don't have a possibility to talk right now. Then it's clear.
I was just safeguarding myself because my kids just got home. So thank you for answering my question. That was a really good answer. I should specify that I was thinking of something like relating what is happening in the game. I said on the screen, but I mean in the game, to personal experiences with, for instance, people I know, like having a frame of reference. And there I couldn't fit it in, but you talk about aesthetic emotions, and that makes a lot of sense to me. So thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you. That was a really great presentation. Leonid Moises, I think you had something else to ask or not? I think you wanted to formulate your question.
Yes, well, if I understand correctly, we're closing our presentation and slowly shifting towards like general talk. So I have a question, but it is addressed both to Maxime and, well, basically to everyone else, because in your presentation, you were talking about the ability of video games to induce emotions, or speaking more broadly, different mental states in players. Like players are interested, concerned, care about characters and situations in the game, and so on. What, in your opinion, is the relationship between video games making us experience emotions and video games simulating emotional relationships between characters in game. Like me as a player experience some sort of emotion about Ellie from The Last of Us, and The Last of Us as a simulation of emotional relationship between Joel and Ellie. It's I don't know, it's more of a topic than a question. Just it was bugging me from yesterday's presentation, and your presentation just reactualized this problem for me. So maybe you have some thoughts or ideas about it.
It's a very good question. Well, if I add a like a theory of identification, I would say that, well, it's the same. What you have, the emotion you have are the same that the characters have. That's the basic idea of the identification conception of emotion. But like when we think about it, in every situation, we react to people, right? We just, like, our emotional experience is not just about us, it's about the people who surround us. So I guess we react to these people as we would react to these characters, as we would react to any other people we care of. Like if you feel compassion towards Ellie because she's unfortunate, well, probably you will feel the same compassion. And of course, there's some details, I guess, that are not exactly the same, but towards a friend that is living the same situation. So I don't think there is that much of a difference because there's something that separates me from the characters or any people or any person.
Yeah, in this case, yes, but for example, in case of games simulating romantic relationships, so yes, I as a player obviously care about character, for example, member of my party in RPG with whom my main character has a romantic relationship, but I obviously is not in love with him in usually in any sense.
Yes.
So, well, that's precisely what I'm thinking about.
No, yeah, I understand now your question. It's very good. Well, I have to admit, I didn't have really any thought on this particular situation, like the case of romantic relationship with characters or with, you know, in dating sims or these kind of games, I guess you're referring to. Also, now, what kind of emotional experience looks like when you're playing these games? Are you really, I mean, for me, I never had these experience, so I don't know, but are you really loving these characters? Are you not like more curious about what's going to happen, or what kind of emotional experience are we expecting from these games? Maybe we can start from this point to try to find answers. I don't know if anyone in the chat have any answers.
Yeah, in the chat there was a question. Well, there was a commentary by Andrei Shevlyakov about that falling in love with virtual characters. Of course, does happen, and I remember that Renata, in the case that she was talking about yesterday, definitely was about, yeah, like having a slap on your cheek from the beloved one. Yes.
Yes, fall in love with virtual character is obviously a reality, and it was a reality long before video games. People were falling in love with paintings, with characters from books. That is obvious, something that is true, but that is obviously not what was intended by the developers. So I guess, and actually, I think it is really weird because, for example, very often when game is trying to simulate hate, like when our protagonist is hating an antagonist, the game tries to evoke hate in us as a player. So it's basically the same emotion on the both sides of the screen. And it is the same with like concern for a well-being, fear and anxiety for a well-being. But in case of romantic love, I'm not so sure. And well,
there is plenty of example of a difference. Well, now I have an answer for you. You make me think of a lot of things. Well, I have written my master thesis on guilt. Guilt we feel for the action we do in games. And yeah, when you think about Papers, Please, Spec Ops: The Line, The Walking Dead, there are plenty of games that we are going to feel guilt, but not the main character. Like in Spec Ops: The Line, I don't know if you know this war game, similar to Apocalypse Now, the film. Well, is just the main protagonist is just an horrendous character, but you can help yourself but feel guilt for what happened, or at least feel miserable for this. We could think also of Undertale, right? Undertale, if you're going the neutral path the first time, of course you will feel guilt at the end. You don't know what the character will feel like your main character, and it doesn't really matter because your emotions are not like created from a specific point of view in the game. It's coming from the global situation, right? So I think this is could be one example of the difference between the emotion that are simulated, as you say, in the game, and what you're actually experiencing as a game player. So yeah, I think we're getting close to something here.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I sent to you my email. If it is okay, could you please send your thesis to me?
Yeah, I will do this, and I will also. You mean my references or my thesis?
Both.
Both?
Both are good.
But do you read French? Because that might be a problem. You could use Google Translate in any case.
Yeah, I guess you can send it to me. I mean, it won't hurt anyway.
Yeah,
I will
anyway,
try.
yeah.
My wife knows a bit of French, so I guess it will be a horrible word by word, horrendous experience of trying to decipher your beautiful but extremely hard language.
Very, very good. And I will also just share the references in the chat in a few moments, but there's a formatting problem I have to fix first. So just so if people are interested too, they could just copy paste and yeah.
Okay, so thank you for this discussion.